When you look back on safety, and I started with MnDOT back in the 70s, and I've been working on safety things now for 35 years, that for 30 some of those years, the focus on safety was, let's go find places that have lots of crashes, and then we'll try to mitigate those, and along the way we hope we will mitigate some severe crashes, and that's called being reactive. And so for 30 some years, the whole federal safety program, all of the state safety programs were all reactive. And there's a couple of problems with that. First, from a personal perspective, when you're reactive, and every person I've talked to who works for a government agency in safety has a story just like this, which is ultimately a phone call comes from a resident that says, how many people do you have to kill before you do something to address the safety issue? And we'd all come up with lots of ways of saying, well, it's not really what it's about. But it really was, in the respect that we were entirely reactive. The program was set up to find places with lots of crashes, irrespective of how severe they were. And then we got to go do something. The new thing that's out there that caused lots of states to rethink their approach to safety, and also caused Federal Highway to do so, was adopting as a performance measure for safety severe crashes as opposed to all crashes. And if you start doing the research on what severe crashes, where they happen and what they're like, what you find out is they're scattered all over the rural system. And you can't use this reactive method anymore because there are no places that have severe crashes that pile up. In order to do this system-based kind of planning, it's really focused on the kinds of strategies that tend to be low cost, that can be widely spread across systems, because there's thousands of miles of county highway, there's tens of thousands of miles of curves, there's thousands of intersections that we're going to find are at risk across the system. Well, you can't invest millions of dollars at each of those locations. There isn't enough money. You have to think in terms of investing thousands of dollars. Okay, and what are some of those strategies? Well, one of them, for example, streetlights at rural intersections. It costs about $8,000 to install at a rural intersection. They've been proven effective through academic research at reducing crashes. And the benefit-cost ratio is very, very high. But in MnDOT world, they have a policy that says any streetlight we put in a rural location, local units of government have to pay the power. Well, the local units of government in rural areas are townships, and they don't have two nickels to rub together. So there's been a fair pushback in some of the MnDOT districts to actually go out and deploy streetlights in these rural intersections because they don't want to take on the power costs. It's against their own policy. But that clearly, in my mind, is the trend going forward, is to invest more and more of the state safety dollars systemically to go find the places that are at risk, to do low-cost improvements or build them in as the roads get reconstructed. I think most people in the safety community would agree that the vast majority of crashes, if you look for causative factors, are behavioral. Do you choose to put a seatbelt on or not? Do you choose to drink and drive? Do you choose to be distracted? Do you choose to speed? Those kinds of things. And yet, you know, we've invested an awful lot, at least the Department of MnDOT has, in infrastructure kinds of things. It's trying to find some kind of a balance with how do you invest to address behavioral kinds of things as opposed to infrastructure kinds of things. And I don't have a solution for that. I just think that that's a very interesting idea that will have to be debated at some policy level that says how much do we choose to invest in infrastructure versus how much do we choose to invest in trying to change drivers' behaviors. At some point in the future, with all the investment in better infrastructure, with all the investment in safer vehicles, at some point it seems to me there's going to have to be a focus on the behavioral kinds of things, and we're going to push way up against personal freedom kinds of issues. And I don't know who wins that debate. In the Scandinavian countries, their threshold for DUI is a fraction of what ours is. would our politicians ever let us get there? I don't know. I don't know. It's just some really interesting questions going forward and some very substantial public policy kinds of things.